If you only check the most downloaded games on the Play Store, you're going to be pretty disappointed. The truth is, addictive games are usually hidden among the different genres on the Play Store, but the interesting part is that you don't even need to search for them, because I'm about to show you 25 games that I'm sure will get you hooked. So you already know, just hit the like button and come with me. I think it's safe to say that Counter-Strike is one of the most famous games in the world, and of course it has its own mobile version too. Let's talk about Standoff 2. Honestly, I think this is the game that comes closest to being a mobile Counter-Strike. The game is basically a copy. You have terrorists versus counter-terrorists, and you need to plant the bomb or eliminate everyone. There's something interesting. The game has a kind of casual mode where you can learn a lot, but if you want something more serious, you need to enter the ranked modem. For a long time, this was one of the only games with a competitive scene on the Play Store, although I don't know how it is nowadays, but it's definitely a great FPS game. Definitely the oldest game on our list. You've probably come across it before. Let's talk now about sort of XOLAN. This was one of the first 2D games that became really popular on Android. I remember a lot of people playing it because of how simple the game is, and it really reminds you of those simpler 2D games where you need to move your character around, save the princesses, and defeat enemies along the way. The game doesn't have a very deep story. You just need to save the world and rescue as many girls trapped in cages as you can. The game has around 35 different stages, and it's a great game to spend some time with. This is an extremely simple game, but at the same time extremely effective, and it's only available on Android. Let's talk now about Tiny Guardians. The objective is actually pretty simple. You need to get the princess from one side to the other, but of course you can place up to 4 characters beside her to protect her. So I think you can also say that the game is a tower defense, but you actually move the characters you're using to protect her. And one of the best parts is definitely the characters. You unlock a lot of them, especially because the game is offline and they're all very different from each other. And of course things keep getting harder and more complex, which is where the game really starts to shine. It's very simple to understand but extremely addictive. If you want a slightly different survival game, let's put it that way, you need to try this one. Let's talk now about Tomorrow. This is a game that puts you in the shoes of a character who has to survive with basically nothing. Unlike other survival games, this one doesn't really have an objective, so as the objective is simply survival and you need to find a way to keep your character from dying of hunger or thirst. Usually you start alone on a closed map, just you trying to survive, but shortly after the game starts opening up bigger maps and even maps with other players for you to enjoy. The game looks really good, has a good PvP system, and manages to be one of the best survival games on the Play Store. An offline game that was released a long time ago and is pretty forgotten nowadays. Let's talk now about Unruly Heroes. The story revolves around the sacred scroll that maintained the balance and harmony of the world. When the scroll is torn into pieces and its fragments are scattered, evil forces, monsters, and corrupted deities spread across the land. I think one of the best mechanics is the fact that the game has 4 characters for you to play as. You can switch between them at any time, and of course they all have their own characteristics, and you need to make sure you're switching at the right moment as well. If I'm not mistaken, this game was released for mobile in 2016. It never became that popular, but it's a great hidden gem for anyone looking for something more offline. I think every gaming platform has its own Metal Slug. For a long time, Android was the only one that didn't have a version, but now we finally have one. Let's talk now about Metal Slug Awakening. Come on, boy! What's really interesting about this game is that it takes a lot from the old Metal Slug games while also bringing plenty of new things. For example, many of the maps and missions you'll play are based on the older games, but what I need to tell you is that the game also has a lot of online features. For example, that there are a bunch of characters for you to unlock, as well as weapon and character progression systems, among many other things. It's also a good game to play in co-op, and it's very addictive. A simulation game, but with something a little different, much more focused on a darker world. Let's talk now about Moonlight Peaks. You play as a young vampire who escapes his family's castle to live in a magical village. The main goal is to prove to his skeptical father that a life based on compassion is possible for the undead, rebuilding an abandoned farm and uncovering the secrets of 7 families. I think you can also consider this one a cozy game. There are no combat mechanics and there's no difficulty that will leave you stuck in one place. It's a game you need to play every day and learn over time, while of course developing your character, getting to know the villagers and becoming part of the game. One of the best survival games on the Play Store is definitely this one. Let's talk now about Once Human, maybe one of the heaviest games on our list, but it really deserves to be here because it's very addictive. The idea of the game is still the same. You create your character and immediately get dropped into a world full of zombies and you need to survive. It mixes survival with a kind of simulator where you need to build your house and collect some items, but of course there are plenty of zombies to kill along the way. The cool part is that it works almost like an online open world. You can encounter other players, do co-op missions, and much more. Right now I think this is one of the best games on the Play Store, and it's also doing really well on Steam. For a long time, this game was one of the most downloaded FPS games on the Play Store, but now its new version promises to change things quite a bit. Let's talk now about Pixel Gun 2. This was basically a Minecraft style game, but in FPS format. The game managed to innovate by bringing almost a sandbox mode, where this time there was a lot of stuff for you to explore, but now its second version promises graphical improvements, gameplay improvements, and of course many other game modes as well. I ended up playing it and the game really has evolved a lot. Now there are even more options for you to play, and it's the kind of game that will probably become much bigger over time. When it comes to FPS games, Android is usually limited to just a few options, but this one is really interesting. Let's talk now about POLYFIELD. Unlike other FPS games, this one has a much larger scale. For example, instead of being 5 versus 5 like Counter-Strike, the game has maps with 24 versus 24 players. And that's one of the biggest features of this game. Instead of just being a shooter, you could almost call it a war game. The game has these polygon-style graphics which honestly don't get in the way at all. And it's a game that's slowly gaining popularity. It's taking its time, but it's definitely a game worth checking out. Now, this game has been active on the Play Store for a long time, but for some reason it never became that popular. Let's talk now about DWARFY Journey. The objective of the game is pretty simple. You'll enter different dungeons, collect as many items as you can, and of course level up your character. Yes, if you're wondering, the game is basically a roguelike in its simplest form. However, I need to tell you that it's a completely different kind of game because it's extremely difficult. The game is so difficult that you might not even be able to get past the first stage. On top of that, you can lose all your items if you end up dying. But it's also the kind of game that gives you a lot of rewards if you take enough risks. Apparently it looks like a simple roguelike, but it's not quite like that. A while ago, a completely different FIFA game was released, and we're going to talk about it now. Its name is FIFA Heroes. Well, technically this is also a soccer game, but as you can see, it's very different. You have fewer characters to collect, and some dribbles and even goals are completely different. On top of that, you have some of the craziest characters in the world, including real players like Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi. You even have characters like Thor, among several other crazy characters. Honestly, I don't know if you'll like this game just because you like soccer, because it's very different, but it's definitely worth trying precisely because of that. Maybe you don't like soccer, but you might like this one. Imagine a battle royale, but in a medieval style. That's exactly what this game delivers. Let's talk now about Golden Glory. I think I've already explained everything because you can already get a pretty good idea of how the game works. In the game, you have 4 different classes, and of course each one is very different. And trust me, you need all 4 to survive inside the cave. You have both players and NPCs to defeat and level up your character. And instead of guns, your character has abilities and of course swords to defeat enemies. The objective is to be the last survivor, but with a completely different game mode. Surprisingly, the game ended up doing really well on Android. Now, I honestly think this is the best RPG on the Play Store. I'm completely addicted to it, and let's talk now about Guardian Tales. I think you can summarize the story of this game like this. Your character is a rookie knight with high expectations, but ends up alone with the future princess, and your goal is to protect her from every danger that comes your way. This happens in every world you enter, but I can tell you that the game has around 23 worlds. That would be roughly 400 different stages, not even counting the online modes, co-op modes, and PvP. The game is incredibly complete, and surprisingly, it's exclusive to Android. It doesn't have versions on other platforms, and it's definitely one of the best games on this list. Well, even though Gunbound is from the 2000s, its mobile version is incredible and of course extremely addictive, and let's talk about it now. I think you could categorize this game as a turn-based RPG, but as you can see, you play with vehicles. The objective of the game is to aim and shoot. Even trying to hit your enemy from above, it may seem pretty simple, but the game is actually quite complicated. There are several different vehicles with different types of shots and even different ways of playing. On top of that, you can have up to 8 people playing against each other, and that's one of the best parts. It's a really good game to play with friends. It's a game that's a little difficult to learn all the mechanics, but once you do, it's extremely addictive. I definitely knew this game was going to become big enough to be one of the biggest, but I didn't know it would get this huge. Let's talk now about HEARTOPIA, one of the most famous cozy or relaxing games on the Play Store. The interesting part is that it comes in an online format, but it's the kind of game that doesn't really have an ending. You have several objectives in this game, like building the best house possible or buying as many clothes as you can for your character. Graphically, it's one of the cutest things ever. I really like the art style, and of course the open world gives you plenty of freedom to do whatever you want. I think the most impressive thing about this game is that it became successful on basically every platform it was released on, and honestly this little game is really well made. It truly deserves it. That great feeling of turning on your PlayStation 2 and playing a hack and slash game, well, now you can do the same thing on Android. Let's talk about GUNGRAVE Core UEE.
Great! They're coming from all sides!
In the game, you'll play as a character named Grave, trying to defeat one of his biggest villains. The game doesn't really have much of a story. It's mostly an excuse for you to defeat as many enemies as possible. This really is a PlayStation 2 port where you had very little story and a lot of combat. The interesting part is exactly that. Your character has 3 different types of weapons to shoot with, and of course several abilities to defeat enemies, bosses, and pretty much everything that gets in your way. This is a really interesting game, especially if you're into faster and more intense combat. A lot of people end up skipping this game because it looks like just another generic anime game, but it's actually really interesting. Let's talk now about Crystal of ATLAN. The most interesting thing is that it's an MMORPG. You can find other players around the map, play cooperatively, and explore the open world with other people, but most of the game actually takes place in dungeons. Unlike many other games, it moved away from the gacha system, and nowadays you can get all the characters just by playing the game. It's really good for co-op, as the game mainly focuses on cooperative modes, but a lot of people end up getting addicted to the PvP as well. It's really good. Actually, this game is much more fun when you play it with a friend. Let's talk now about Don't Starve Together. This isn't a new game with some completely new idea, let's put it that way. It's the same survival game, a little darker, but this time it works with a really interesting co-op mode. Surprisingly, co-op games on Android are still pretty rare, and this is a game where you can make friends and invite your friends to play with you. And surprisingly, the objective is simple. Survive for as long as you can, don't let your character starve to death, and at the same time take care of their sanity. And it's worth remembering that it's a paid game, and even so, the co-op still works. This is one of those games that mixes survival with RPG elements. Let's talk now about Dragon and Home. The game looks a lot like Minecraft because of its blocky style, but it's completely different. At the beginning, one of your main goals is to stay alive by finding food and of course building your own house. But things start to feel more like an RPG later on, because after that you choose a class and start fighting different enemies, either alone or with other players. I would also consider it an MMORPG, since you can find several people along the way from the beginning, but you can still follow your own path alone if you want. This game has been getting more interesting over time, and it's evolving quite a lot. Let's talk now about Duet Night Abyss. Well, it's hard not to say that the game tried to copy the secret formula that works so well in Genshin Impact. But one thing the game did really well was listen to the community and start making adjustments. Nowadays, the game feels quite different. For example, it has an FPS style format that actually works really well. On top of that, they removed the gacha system and focus much more on having a cohesive story. It's the kind of game that launches a little quietly and keeps improving a lot over time. It's definitely worth giving it a chance now. A game that recently made its way to Android, and even though it's not a major port, it's a really interesting game. Let's talk now about Dungeon of HINTBERG. The game tells the story of a character named Louisa who has always wanted to become a monster hunter. Now she sets off to chase her dream in a very distant town, and once she arrives, she meets all the hunters and discovers that this is actually a very dangerous profession. I really like the game's graphics. Like, this cartoon style is actually really beautiful, and of course the combat is much more responsive with something similar to a Souls-like. And honestly, I only played the beginning of the game, but I believe it ends up becoming a much bigger game than it seems. The idea of having an AFK game is already pretty crazy, but this game actually did it really well. Let's talk now about AFK Journey. Usually AFK games are the kind of games where you don't really need to play, you just watch your characters battle and level them up. But this game did something different. It focused a lot on having a really good story and an open world that you can explore in every direction. But here's the interesting part, the gameplay is actually AFK. You simply select your character and watch them battle, but all the other parts of the game make up for it really well. On top of that, the game has a lot of characters and looks really good as well. AFK games can be a little intimidating, but this one is really good. If you just look at this game, you'll think it's a generic RPG, but it's actually a tower defense. Let's talk now about Ash of Echoes. This game takes up an incredible 15 gigabytes, and my friend, I'm telling you, that's really impressive, especially considering how the game works. A lot of people praise the story of this game and say it's really good, but honestly, I didn't pay that much attention to it. The objective of the game is also usually pretty simple. You need to protect the location while enemies come from all sides. The interesting part is the characters, which have that classic RPG style. And of course you have a lot of control over their abilities and even where they move. The game manages to take the tower defense style and mix it with an RPG, and it works really well. And that's it for today's list. I hope you found at least one game worth trying. If you did, leave a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.